Today I'm gonna show you a real quick tip how you can make nice and natural textures with a sea sponge, and we're starting right now. Alright, I already went ahead and I base coated my lure with opaque white, and over that opaque white I did a wicked metallic white course. It's gonna give a nice and shiny glittery effect, like as you can see now. It's nice and metallic. First I'm gonna outline the pattern that I want on there, and then we're gonna use a sponge to create some more texture and depth in there. And for this demonstration we're gonna paint a koi carp, and I got Vallejo hot orange here, and I'm gonna reduce it a little bit so that hot orange is nice and reduced. So we're just gonna carefully outline our texture first. Alright, now let's grab our sponges here. Now these are dry, as you can see, and it is very important, if you want to use a natural sponge, a sea sponge, you'll have to soak it with water first. So I'm gonna put these in water first. Alright, so these have soaked for a minute now, and now they are completely moist. I squeezed all the water out, so they're just moist and not wet anymore. And you also got a lot of different kinds of sea sponges. Now I got two kinds here. This one has a lot of small pores, and it gives a really nice, how would you say, really nice texture. While this one has all these little hairs sticking out, and that creates, actually, if you dip it on very softly, you're only gonna dip it with the hairs, and then you create like this tiny kind of dots kind of texture. It's really nice because it just creates such a natural texture. It's irregular, you cannot predict it, it's unpredictable, and that makes it really fun and really realistic looking as well. So first of all, I'm just gonna take some Vallejo Sun Yellow, and I'm gonna put this in this little plastic cup. I'm not gonna reduce it or anything, just 3 drops or something. And I'm gonna use this sponge first. Now I'm gonna make sure first that it is nice and moist, because if it is nice and moist, it's gonna suck up that paint a little bit better. As you can see, it soaked up the paint entirely. Now if you're in doubt what kind of texture you're gonna get, or you got too much paint on your sponge, just take a sheet of paper and dip some on there. As you can see, I can already get rid of the excess and already see what kind of pattern I'm gonna get, so you can plan a little bit up front how you're gonna do it. So now I'm just gonna stipple it on there. And the reason that I'm using this sun yellow on top of that hot orange is to create some brighter spots again. Right now got two very subtle nuances of a yellow orange-ish color, but when I airbrush an orange over that later, that yellow texture is gonna come through just a little bit. And when you're done with your sponge, don't forget to clean it out. Don't let this dry. If you just clean out that sponge, you can use it forever. So I just throw this in the water, let it soak up, squeeze it out until the water is clear again, and then your sponge is ready to use again. And that's how quick this goes. Now I'm gonna take a little bit of wicked opaque pyro red, and I'm just gonna do the exact same thing. I want to make sure there's not too much on my sponge. Now I'm gonna do the same with wicked opaque bismuth yellow vanadate. It's just to create some more lighter colors in there again. And now this is dry. I'm gonna grab my airbrush again. And I still got that same mixture of hot orange tint down with some reducer. And I'm just gonna go over that and create a little bit more of a random texture and darken a little bit of that entire pattern. And now I'm gonna mix a little bit of Vallejo Bloody Red and Hot Orange together to create this little darker tone of orange. And again, I'm gonna use my same sponge. Just to create some texture. Now I got some Vallejo Gory Red in my chamber and I reduced it quite a bit. And I want to darken certain spots just a little bit on the top of the head. So I'm gonna dust that on there. And this starts to get a really nice color now. Now I'm taking some regular Vallejo Black. And I'm gonna use this other sponge with a little bit more hairy texture. And I'm just gonna test dip it first a little bit. Play a little bit with pressure as well. Not much pressure, it's just little dots. A lot of pressure gives this nice texture. And then we're gonna use some black on there. And I'm using this sponge to create smaller textures. Like so. And I'm gonna use the other one for bigger textures later. So I quickly off camera painted some details on there with a paintbrush, such as the fins and everything with just some black and white. And I also painted this really cool gill effect, and as you can see, that really is a cool effect, so I'm really pleased with that. It's the first time I tried it, but I'm definitely gonna do that more on this lure. And now we're gonna add some more detail because I find that it's a little too abstract now. So I got some Vallejo leathery brown in my chamber now, and I thinned it down with about 70% of reducer, so it's very subtle and a little bit more transparent. And I just want to give those fins a little bit of a color. The underside of the head I want to give a little bit of color. The tail needs a little bit of color, just to make it stand out a little bit more from the rest of the body and give it a little bit more depth. And now with some thinned down Vallejo Dead White, I reduced it again with about 70%. I am gonna push back some of those black details a little bit more to make them fade out a little bit. So by spraying a little bit of transparent white, we're gonna push those back a little bit into the background. Now for the eyes, I'm gonna use that same reduced Vallejo Dead White, and I'm gonna make them a little bit more white, especially on the edges. And now I got some paintbrush paint on my stippling tool, and I'm just gonna add a few of those black little dots on there. There we go, ready for clear coat. Right guys, our lure is finished, and as you can see, the texture looks very natural and it's super easy to do with a sea sponge. And there's a lot more you can do with the sea sponge. Here I did the back with a little bit of black and red, just dipping it on there with a sponge, and as you can see, the results, they look pretty natural because of that irregular texture that it leaves. So it's a really fun thing to use, and you can get really nice results with that. Here's another one. Here's a small burbot pattern that I once did, and I used black, gold and dark green for that, and I just dipped it on there with the sponge. An airbrush was barely used on this lure actually, just to put the base coats on and a little bit on the fins. The rest is all done with a sponge. So it's pretty quick, it's pretty easy, and yeah, anyone can achieve these kinds of effects. So that's pretty nice. If you have any questions or feedback or ideas, let me know in the comments down below. As always guys, I will leave some links in the description below. This will guide you to my webshop, and if you would buy anything there, in this way you're gonna support me and the channel. Thank you guys for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.